All right, here we are. Every day we have a new setup of the tables just to keep things fresh and exciting. All right, so I'm going to start with the email that I sent out last night, which unfortunately is coming out as Gmail. The sender says it's coming from Gmail, so it looks like spam, but it's really me, and I have to fix that. But anyway.
Shabbat Toriate.
So I'm going to start with, no, not the one I sent out now, the one I sent out last night. Notes on Siman 253. Points from the Poiskin, because I just want to go over that and make sure I didn't miss out on anything that I meant to say. So let's do that now, and then we'll continue. Okay. These are some points of the Mishnah Berurah. We'll start with that. If you remember, we said that there are opinions that say that the rules of Shehiyah only apply to Friday night food. Any food that you're planning to eat on Shabbos day, even if it's not raw, you're allowed to leave without any problem of Shehiyah, even if it's not covered, even if it's less than half cooked. And the Mishnah Berurah says, even though we don't follow those opinions in the first place, but you can rely on them after the fact. Then you say if you did it, the food is not going to be forbidden. So they're not going to be forbidden until after Shabbos, like we said, plus waiting till as long as it took to cook it. Because there are many times we have an opinion that we don't rely on in the first place, but after the fact we can be more lenient. So that's one example. Okay, the Mishnah Berurah gives a partial list of foods that are mitztamek v'yaf aloi, which means what?
They get better.
They get better as they cook, exactly. Meat, unless you're going to have guests, we mentioned that. Cabbage, beans, I guess just because they take a long time to cook.
Softer.
Exactly. Chopped meat and eggs in a cooked dish. What I mean is eggs that are in their shell, in a cholent pot, for example, so they're soaking in the flavor of the cholent or whatever it is that you're cooking, so that is considered mistamek v'yafaloi. On the other hand, the following foods are mistamek v'raloi. Meat if you have guests, like we said, because it's shrinking. Food with flour. A fig dish, a date dish. I've never had a fig or date dish. Porridge, like oatmeal kind of thing. And roasted egg. That means like a cracked egg that you're frying or whatever. Once it's fully done, it just gets worse because it's not absorbing any flavor. It's just overcooking.
So meat could be good or bad.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly. It's subjective.
If you're ever getting,
Exactly.
if you would eat it yourself.
It's totally subjective. If you eat it yourself, you might like it a little bit burnt and crusty. But if you have guests, you want it full. So that's what we said yesterday, that these things are very subjective. It's really the person and the circumstance. Another point is that he says if you're not sure if something is mitztamek v'yafal or mitztamek v'ra'aloi, you should be strict. Now the truth is, this whole thing is only relevant if you're being strict in general with the Machaber's opinion and saying that you need to cover it unless it's fully cooked and tasting bad, which we don't really do that. Neither Sfardim don't really do that either today. So nevertheless, just for your information, that's what it is. Okay. Here's a very interesting thing that the Mishnah Berurah says about straw and stubble. And I found it interesting because it seems to follow the opinion of the Brisker Rav that we mentioned last week. That the Brisker Rav, when he came to Yerushalayim and he was using a gas stove for the first time in his life, he didn't cover it because it doesn't die down like coals do. So the Mishnah Berurah says, it says that you don't have to cover straw and stubble, right? Because it dies down so quickly. Well, what if it's not dying down because you have a lot of straw? You packed in that oven or that kir or whatever it is, you packed it in with straw. And when Shabbos comes in, it's still burning because you have a lot of straw. So maybe you should have to cover it. So he says, nah, you shouldn't have to. Logically, he says you shouldn't have to. He's not 100% sure, but he says logically you shouldn't have to. Because straw burns very effectively. As long as it's burning, you don't need to stoke it. And once it's finished burning, it's totally finished. And there's nothing left to stoke. So therefore, there's no problem. So you see, he's basically saying that an open flame that's not coals, that's burning strong, does not need to be covered, which is basically what a gas stove is, and an electric stove, the same thing. So that seems to follow that opinion, which would make the whole thing of covering fires today completely obsolete. We don't follow it, but it's interesting that he says that. So it's something that we can perhaps bear in mind and know about. So
The future
We'll continue.
using these doors.
Oh, okay.
sometimes, but it's, on Monday nights especially, we're going to start using that door because they want us to keep that door locked when the whole building is empty. Tuesday nights not, but unless there's other classes, we'll see. Okay, so two opinions. We're just going over the sheet that I sent out last night. Two opinions as to why a forbidden shehiyah is asr until after Shabbos. We said this yesterday, that if you leave food on the fire in a forbidden way, so it's forbidden until after Shabbos. The Mishnah Berurah just brings two reasons for it. First of all, that you simply should not benefit from a forbidden act. A person did an aveir, we don't want you to benefit from it, even by mistake, because it might lead to on purpose, or people saying that it's a mistake when really it's on purpose. But it's just that it's a sin, we don't want you to benefit from a sin. And then there's another, another logic that the Rambam brings, is to make sure it doesn't happen again. If you could benefit from it, so you think, yeah, it's not so bad, I'll do it, and I'll enjoy it, and whatever, even though it's an aveir. So that's why they said not to use it even after the fact. Okay, now, number 7 is going to be relevant for what we're going to learn today, which is about the rules of Chazarah. Chazarah means when you want to return something onto a fire that was on the fire, you take it off, you want to put it back on. So we're going to see there are many conditions that you have to fulfill. And some of those conditions are a matter of opinion, meaning to say not all of the opinions say you have to keep them. Some say you do, some say you don't. So the Mishnah Berurah says that even if we're going to be strict about keeping the conditions, like we're going to see, if you don't keep them, and some opinions say that you don't have to even do them in the first place, like we're going to see, if you have to hold it, if you're allowed to put it down, if you can transfer it from one pot to another, all kinds of questions. If there's any opinion that says you're allowed to do it in the first place, so we can rely on that opinion after the fact. Okay, number 8. We're going over the sheet that I sent out last night. We're doing different tables every night, musical tables. So the point is that number 8, there are opinions, and this is a something we did mention in the past. It's the opinion of the Rashba that the Mishnah Berurah brings down. How are you? And the Rashba is of the opinion that a person cannot leave food on a fire if it's less than a third cooked or a half cooked, depending on how you define machal ben drusoi, even if that fire is covered. The Rashba is of the opinion that you can that covering only helps. See, this is according to the opinion that says, like the Chacham, that you have to cover it even if it's half cooked. Right? You have to cover it all the way till it's fully cooked and mistamek v'raloi and tasting worse. So according to that opinion, the Rashba says that if it's less than machal ben drusoi, so if it's less than half or a third cooked, then covering doesn't even help, because you're so nervous about it not being ready that even if you cover it, it's not going to help. And this goes back to what we were trying to explain last night. What is the reason why people, even if they have a covered flame, they have a blech, or they have a plata, or whatever they have, even so, many people try to cook it in advance before Shabbos. So this explains perhaps that custom, the trying to perhaps fulfill every opinion. And according to the Rashba, like I said, the Mishnah Berurah says, or Bekiva Eger says it also, that covering does not even help if it's not cooked to that extent. Again, that's not the main halacha. So if you're stuck out and it's not fully cooked, or not even half cooked, not even a third cooked, you could cover. But just to explain those that do try to cook in advance. All right, the Yalkut Yosef, just going over the notes from last night. Yalkut Yosef, as the Sfaradim Marlina regarding Shehiyah, we discussed that yesterday. A proof that a blech is like ketuma from 253.3. What is that about? Oh yeah, now I remember. Okay, I didn't really expand on that. Some question if a blech, which is basically a piece of metal, is the same as covering the ashes with fire, which is what they did in the time of the Gemara. Because they say when you cover the ashes with fire, the ashes are completely covered. There's no ashes visible at all. When you cover the fire with the metal, yeah, it's like a covering, but the metal, the fire is still there. It's not like there's a separation between the pot and the fire. But you didn't actually cover the fire itself. You can peek under it, you can see it. So the Mishnah Berurah proves that it is considered as good as ketima, as covering it with ashes, because it says, the Yalkut Yosef proves, because it says in Seif Gimel, in the third Seif, which we didn't get to yet, in the Machaber of 253, it says there that if you get up in the morning and you see that your chalet is burning, so what do? So you can lift it up. There's a whole thing about adding water. We'll get to that another time. But the advice of Mishnah Berurah says you pick it up, you put an empty pot underneath it, and put it back down. And that way it's like a little bit further away from the fire. Now, the rule is that when it comes to Chazarah, when it comes to returning a pot on a fire, everybody agrees that the fire has to be covered, no matter what the food is, if it's getting better, getting worse. And the Machaber just says you just put a pot there. He doesn't say that it has to be a covered flame, which means that a pot acts as covering the flame. It's just as good as covering the flame. So basically an empty pot is the same as a blech. It's no different than a blech. Yes?
It's just a piece of metal too?
Yeah.
Just to distance the pot.
Yeah.
But when you pick it up and you put the metal and you put it back, it doesn't consider like bishul.
Bishul of what?
I don't know, because it's already hot and you can move it. Are you talking about that this one is cold, it's going to be hot, and then
you're putting it back with all the conditions of Chazarah that we're going to learn today with Hashem's help. And the conditions are it still has to be hot, and you kept it in your hands, so there's no bishul. You're just putting down the pot there to keep it a little bit further away from the fire. What I thought you were asking is something the Chazon Ish says. The Chazon Ish says you're not allowed to put a blech on a fire on Shabbos, because if the blech turns red hot, you are creating a fire. Because halachically, a red hot metal is like a fire. Practically.
On a lower temperature, you
So Rabbi,
I don't think he even allows it on a lower temperature. I don't know if it's Xavier because maybe it'll come red hot. I don't think he allows it even on a lower temperature.
So Rabbi, so this is the blach. If they put the pot, it's a low chance it's going to be red.
No, very low chance, unless it's a flame.
Because you got two of them. Unless if you
I'm talking
remove
about the
this
one that you put on. Talking about the one that you put on.
The one you put on, this is the one to put on top of that, and then the pot back. This one, if something on top of it, it will be red too also.
It would have to be a very high flame to turn red.
Unless if
And
it's
if it is such a high flame, it's probably going to burn your pot anyway. So, whatever.
so if,
כל אחד גילוי דעת שצריך לדעתי מן האש, אני לא אבוא לבשל.
כן.
לכן הבלח הוא מוליק לגילוי דעת של הצלחה מהאש.
כן.
הרב עובדיה כותב שם, שיש דעה של לחסות גם את המתג
כן.
של האש, שלא יבוא
כן.
להצביע להנמיך, אבל זה לא מדינה.
זה חומרה. כן.
כי מכאן הדין לא גודרים על הוספת
נכון.
חומר בעירה.
נכון, that we mentioned that Rav Moshe Feinstein says in a tshuva that the main thing is the fire, not the knobs, but you could do the knobs as an extra, but you can't replace it. You can't just do the knobs. That's not going to help. That's correct. Now, a very interesting psak that the Yalkut Yosef says, which not everybody agrees to, but it has a very significant halachic difference, that he says that a plata is considered like a covered flame. It's considered already ketuma. Now, if the plata has only one temperature, then there's nothing to talk about, because you can't stoke there's no issue. You can't change the heat. But if it has different temperatures, so it's not like a Shabbos plate specifically, it's made by other companies just for, a warming plate, a cooking plate, whatever. So he says that it's considered a covered flame because it's covered within the coils are not on top, it's built into the system, which is a big chiddush, because other poskim say that you have to do an act, you have to do a gilui das, you have to physically do something that shows that you're minimizing the heat, such as covering it with a blech, or in those days, removing the coals or whatever it was. Otherwise not. So it could be, it doesn't explain it so much, but it could be the pshat that he's saying the fact that you're choosing this particular type of cooking utensil, which is generally a lower heat, maybe that itself is like a gilui das. You're choosing something that has a covered fire because you want a lower heat. Maybe that's already a gilui das. Maybe that's the svar. But other poskim, the Tar Halacha brings many other poskim who say that if you have a plata with different temperatures, you do have to cover. So, if you need a blech, depending on all the details that we're learning.
An electric stove.
Yes.
Whether it's I don't know exactly how it works, but I'm asking. The electric, either it's flat or it has the coil.
Yeah.
So is that considered inside of either the glass top or the coil, and then the covering, which would be the glass, or the actual coil would be the...
No, the coil is the fire. I mean, the coils that you have in Florida, a lot of people have those coils.
It's not like a lining within it that
No.
gets really hot, and then it heats that up.
Coil is actually, it's like a metal which turns hot. I mean, you see it. That's
And the glass top.
the glass top. It would seem maybe is like the plata because it's something inside of there that gets hot, not exactly the surface. Perhaps
So that's what I'm saying. It's a big difference. Right?
big,
So
yeah, it is a big difference. But I don't know. Maybe Bavadia was talking about a plata which is not made for really cooking. It's only for warming.
No, I'm sure it's not kind of like a separate plot, like a warming table.
So I'm saying, so maybe it doesn't apply to the cooktops which are made for regular cooking. I'm not sure.
If you put an empty pot, right? If
Yeah.
you put it upside down, and then besides lifting it up, it also covers the flame as well. But they're not making any differentiation if it's.
Now, there is a difference if it's upside down or right side up in terms of keeping the conditions of Chazarah. We're going to see today that there are many conditions to put something back on a fire, but if you put it back in an unusual way, such as on top of an overturned pot, then you don't have to keep those conditions because you're not cooking in a usual way.
your food is going to be cold.
Whereas if it's in another pot, just a pot in a pot is not considered unusual, so it's not going to help for that. It's going to cover the flame, but it's not going to help for that.
But the food will be cold because it's
Maybe,
upside down pot. Yes.
maybe. You can have a small pot, you can have a tray, like a, No, it could be like one of those, the trays, aluminum trays, turned upside down.
It will not make, still will be cold.
Okay, you don't have to do it. That's fine. There's no halacha that you have to do it. Okay, we discussed yesterday about an oven with a Shabbos mode. One important thing, and that is if you are opening an oven to take anything out, as we explained yesterday, that you can open it if it's a Shabbos oven or if it's already on, whatever it is. But you cannot close the door to that oven if there's anything in it that is not fully cooked. You left it in before Shabbos, maybe it was okay because it was half cooked, fine. But closing the door is going to help it cook faster. So that's a Torah violation, very serious.
Before Shabbat, you're allowed.
Before Shabbos, you're allowed if it's half cooked.
And
If it's
then,
half cooked.
if you open, then you don't know how to close back.
No, until it's fully cooked.
So it's better not to open until you're ready to eat it. Otherwise, you're stuck to be open.
Yeah. Until you're ready to take it out or until it's fully cooked.
Same thing if you put a blanket, right? Blanket over the pots. You cannot return the blanket.
But now again,
It's not full thing.
Oh, whoa.
I Googled yesterday. When a rabbi Rav comes out, gives
One second. A blanket, a hot pot in a blanket, not on the blech, just stam. Is that what you mean?
on the that was must have been. I have to go back. He gave a whole lecture about Shia and Plata.
Who?
I Googled him. And he spoke also about the kishke and the cooking bag. There's no problem. He says no problem whatsoever because this is not the
We don't even know his name, so we're not going to be paskening from him. We didn't know his name. We're not going to pasken from him. Next.
So he spoke. He's also spoke about
Okay, Baruch Hashem.
Oh, it looks like from Israel, whatever. He gave a whole lecture.
Whatever. Next.
So, and the thing he was also brought the thing with if you uncovered blankets, you put it on top of pots. Must have been he was talking about when the pots were on the blech.
Plus, a blanket on a pot on a blech is not simple,
Yeah.
unless it's not on the side, like we said yesterday.
First of all, he said that was good because he brought up a case where it got to the whole family.
That's true too. That's true too. That's true too. But it's also that if it goes down the side, it's usher. But if it's only on the top, yeah, go ahead.
So he said not to do it with bottles. He says you're not allowed to return the blanket on top of the pots because unless it's cold circuit, unless it's already cooked cold circuit.
Yeah. All right. So the Tar. Did I write Tar Halacha? What did I write Tar Halacha? That's strange. Shabbos Halacha. He's also the author of Tar Halacha. Still in my Hilchas Nida mode. Okay, Shabbos Halacha from our Farkash. A few points that he brings in. First of all, mitzdamek, the yafalei is subjective, like we said, depends on the person, depends on the situation. Now, the question is, what is the halacha? Okay. What is the halacha when it comes to a crock pot? Because we learned about a kira, we learned about a tanur, and we learned about a kupach. We said that a tanur, at least a tanur of those days, it kept its heat so strong that there was no way you could keep anything that was not half cooked in it, because all the covering in the world wouldn't help. And then we said a kupach, which is an oven that has room for one pot, if it has a strong fuel, it's like a tanur. That's what we said, right? Everybody remember? I mean, maybe we said it in passing, maybe I didn't discuss it so at length, because it's not so practical.
How does it tell him?
It's as hot as a tanur if you use strong fuel. So what about a crock pot? Is a crock pot like a kupach? Because a kupach is basically when there's room for one pot. Maybe a crock pot has the din of a kupach. And if so, well, you have good fuel there. I mean, you have the electricity feeding the coil or whatever it is. That's a good fuel. Maybe covering the flame shouldn't help, just like it doesn't help in a tanur. which would give us a very strict halacha for crockpots, which have other issues that we discussed yesterday. Whatever.
Talk about that. He says it's called slow cooker in Israel. And then he says, crackpot, that's what he calls that in Israel. And he says you have to put insulated, in other words, it's not one.
It's machlokes, like we said
He says
yesterday.
to put aluminum foil between the insert.
Let's
The
let's save that for when we discuss hatmana and crockpots, because we mentioned in passing. The point is that Farkash says a crockpot is not considered like a kupach simply because we don't see that it has any extra heat more than any other of our utensils. It's not in particular hotter than an oven, than a stove, than it's just one of the methods of cooking. So we're not gonna apply the rules of a kupach to it. Okay, another interesting point is we said the Mishnah Berurah says that
They were also saying that a kupo, you couldn't put something next to it because it was so hot, right?
a tanner.
Yeah,
Oh, and maybe a kupach is like a tanner. Is that what you mean?
yeah, they were saying that you couldn't keep something warm next to it because it would cook it because the fuel was so hot. Am I remembering correctly?
We studied that.
We said actually you could leave it next to it, but there's an opinion that you can't put it next to it on Shabbos.
On shop.
Yeah, there is such an opinion.
Because, I mean, that's, you know how hot something's getting from the outside of it. You're not shaking your hand in the oven. So, like a crock pot, you don't feel any heat from it.
Right, nothing in particular, yeah.
Before Shabbat, it's okay.
Yes, next to an oven, yeah. Okay, now the Mishnah Berurah we said holds that a baker's oven has the din of a tanur, even though it's not shaped like their old tanurim, but it's very hot. So it has the din of a tanur. Rav Farkash questions that simply from the minhag that they had in many shtetlach in Europe, many villages in Europe. People didn't have their own ovens, or their own ovens at least, that were able to stay hot until the next day. They would bring their cholent pots to the city oven, which was like the baker's oven, and they had an erevin in these shtetlach. And he said he remembers it from Yerushalayim when he was a kid. Everybody brought, and you wrote your name on your pot, by the way, because otherwise you might get somebody else's cholent. And you brought it, and they put it all in, and they covered it, and they sealed it up. And then on Shabbos, after shul, everybody would go and bring their cholent pots home. So Stavri just...
Also in Chicago, in Europe and then in Chicago. And my Zaidi said that sometimes they took the wrong one, but it didn't matter because you knew everybody in the neighborhood.
So it was all
You knew the
kosher.
kashrus, so you know sometimes it was better.
Interesting.
They picked it up on the way home.
Very
I
interesting.
remember when I was little.
You remember?
Even when I was little.
Really?
Maybe 3, 4 years old. South side of Chicago.
They used to do that still?
West side of Chicago.
How old are you?
500.
But I'm saying you didn't have ovens in your own homes at that
It was
time?
better in the bakery home. I'm pretty
Interesting.
sure it was hotter.
Very
It was
interesting.
Indirect fire.
Wow, very interesting. Okay. Although, for argument's sake, it could be that everybody had cholents that were already cooked from before, or at least half cooked, or raw, in which case you can put it in an oven. You understand? The whole thing of the oven is that it's always like a revealed flame, right? Okay, but a revealed flame is okay if it's raw or if it's half cooked according to Chananya. So his proof is not necessarily a proof, but anyway, interesting thing. We already said he brings opinions that adjustable plata is like an uncovered flame. Oh yeah, somebody was asking about silver foil. So he brings two opinions about if one sheet of silver foil is good enough. On the one hand, you're doing an action to show that you're covering it, that you're trying to cover it. On the other hand, you're not really minimizing the heat. The whole point of the covering is to minimize the heat, right? It's not a hecker, like you said. It's not that it's reminding you, because then we would cover the knobs mainly. The main objective is to minimize the heat, and really one piece of foil doesn't minimize it in a very clear way. So in order to be sure, he says to make a few layers of foil. Okay, here's another very important point. We said that it's very difficult to make a blech inside an oven because the heat is coming from all four sides. How do you cover that? So it's not practical really to make a blech. He brings that some opinions say if you have a Shabbos mode on your oven, which basically makes all the buttons not work. Anybody know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So basically you can't adjust the heat in there because the Shabbos mode doesn't allow you to. So that's just like a blech. Doesn't allow you to. You press the buttons, it won't work.
Cancel.
So that's the thing. The thing is that's only as good as long as it's in the Shabbos mode. But if you cancel the Shabbos mode, which is not difficult at all, then it goes back to being a regular oven. So it's not a clear heter. Okay, we discussed yesterday a machlokes about how to measure half or a third cooked, time or quality. The rules of shehiyah for water.
So hold on, for Shabbat oven, can you actually flip inside your oven?
You can, but it's not considered a covered flame. It's considered an open flame. So it has to be, based on the rules we learned, half cooked or raw, basically, but not in between raw and half cooked. Before Shabbat, yeah. Before Shabbat. Okay, another point he makes is that the what is outside, sorry? Okay. Yep. Yep. Okay. Open flame is allowed if it's either raw or half cooked. That's the whole thing we're learning here. You cannot put it back in, no. It'll be impossible to put it back in. That's one of the issues of putting back in an oven. Some say even if you could somehow cover the flame of the oven, however, that you still can't put it back in the oven. We're going to see later. But that's definitely one of the issues. Sorry?
I don't know my oven, my old oven used to have the goof chimum at the bottom. So maybe even on the top, around the top tier.
It's two of them.
I was gonna say, put the tray of metal on the bottom. That would have worked.
I think there's usually two. Okay.
הוא כותב שהתנורים שלנו שטופים מהצד, אפשר לדמות את זה לתנורים שלנו.
כן, אבל זה גלוי, זה עדיין אש גלוי.
מה העצה?
לא להוציא אותו.
שמה?
אם הגוף חימום גלוי, זה לא גרוף וכתום, אז מה העצה שהרב אומר שאפשר בשבת? איך אפשר לעשות את זה?
לא, אפילו בלי כיסוי. אם זה בשר חי, או שזה חצי בישול, כבר, כמאכל בן דרוסאי, לפני שבת. אז שזה כמאכל בן דרוסאי, כמו שהשיטה של חנניה, שלמדנו. לא לפי החכמים, לפי חנניה, שחולק על חכמים. לפי החכמים יהיה בעיה. אני לא חושב שלפי החכמים יש יותר, אלא אם כן תכסה את האש באיזשהו צורה. It's not a rally, but I mean, who wants to do that? I mean, nobody wants a cholent that's burnt.
Oh, yeah, I'm saying.
But yeah, in theory, yeah. As far as water is concerned, we discussed the fact, really we're going to discuss it more in Reish Nun Daled in the next simon, but he brings it in, so I'll just mention it here. We discussed that fruit that are edible raw are considered like they're already kamaychal ben rusa. They're considered as if they're already half cooked in terms of not needing to cover the flame. When it comes to water, on the other hand, water is not considered edible raw, even though it is edible raw. But the difference between cold water and hot water is very significant because hot water is a completely different thing. You can do with it what you wouldn't do with cold water. It's a different type of drink, tea, coffee, whatever. So therefore, you cannot say, well, it's edible raw, so I don't need to cover the flame. No, if you're heating water, it has to be at least half cooked before Shabbos, if it's on an open flame. Now, this is very practical if you're heating water in an urn that has different temperatures. If you have a Shabbos urn that has only one temperature on off, it would seem that you could heat it, no problem. But if it has different temperatures, you have to get it to at least half cooked before Shabbos better fully cooked, but at least half cooked, because otherwise it's a problem. Because it's like it's uncovered flame. I mean, it's not uncovered, but within the system, you didn't do anything to the heat source that's within the urn to cover it.
Why is it like a plastic?
Sent a clip about the water burn. It says you have to cook it before Shabbos. If you
One second. Why is it not like a plata? If you hold that a plata is okay, even with a knob on it, then it's the same thing. But if you hold it, you need to do it.
No knob on the plata, no.
No, if there's no knob, then it's okay. I'm talking about one with a knob with temperatures. So then you have
What,
to
the
cover
water? Well, it's sort of referring to
the urn, an
Yeah,
urn
with
an urn with a temperature is like a plata with a temperature.
Yeah, an urn without. Sure.
Is without.
Do that.
Exactly. Yes.
No, so you'd be allowed to warm up your hot water, even if it's,
If it has no temperature, if it has no gauge,
you'd be able to leave it on, if it has to be half cooked.
if it has a
No gauge, no
no
temperature.
gauge, it would seem you
on-
don't need. It would seem that you can do it right before.
Chai. What is that considered chai?
No, it doesn't have to be chai, because you can't be machata. You can't change it.
So the whole suspicion is just underlying.
Yeah.
So now that it doesn't have any, if I
Yeah.
can cook something on the plata without being half cooked,
Correct.
start cooking from before Shabbat, something that's easy to be cooked, say potatoes, on the plata, it doesn't have.
Correct. Correct. It's like a blech. Same thing. Question, yes, sorry.
No, so you said you have to cook the water before. Make sure the water was cooked before Shabbos came in.
No, the Rav said.
On an urn that has a temperature, can you change the temperature or no? You can't change the temperature.
Well, if you can change, there's no problem.
So that's what it would seem, yeah. If you can change
He
it.
didn't make any shulkin, just said, yeah, I don't know which one he was referring to. But
I don't know.
If there's it's only one temperature, it's boiling or keeping warm.
No,
That's what it
if
is.
it has boiling, if you can change it between one and the other, that's the problem.
There's a button where you press for boiling, you can press for boiling.
Then it's a problem. Then it has to be
There's a
at
button
least
that
halfway
says
before
keep
Shabbos.
warm that you can do anything about. But the button that you could press, not temperatures, just could.
That seems to be a problem. If you could do something to make it boil, it seems to be a problem.
What about if you have the plata and with no control?
Yep.
You got chamin pour, the hot water pour. So you got hot water and chamin in the same plata. You're allowed to move this water to chamin because it's the same temperature.
Yeah. Why not?
If it's overcooked or something like that.
Yeah.
According to Svarda,
All right, it has a Shabbos.
I don't think so. No.
it's Giru, you know,
He's not talking about pouring. He's talking about moving it around on the top.
Pouring into the shul.
You talking about pouring or you talking about moving it around?
Not moving, to take water from the hot
Oh,
water.
to pour it in? No, that's a machlokes. We're gonna get to it.
Okay.
Okay. Reasons to cook food completely, even if covered, in case there may be stirring. We discussed it yesterday. Reason to cover it fully cooked, Chazarah for Shabbos. We discussed that yesterday. All right, my friends. With no further ado, we are going to learn the Gemara on Lamed Ches Amud Aleph and Amud Beis. I sent it out at about 8:05. So if you have some kind of device that shows you what I sent out, good.
Okay.
I just sent it out. Yeah. Otherwise, you can just listen and
It's an email, right?
learn. It's an email I just sent out mamish now. Okay, and the reason we're learning this Gemara is because we're learning tonight, with Hashem's help, the sugya of Chazarah, of returning onto the oven. And the question is many different conditions that the Gemara says. So we're going to learn them in the Gemara, and we're going to see that there are different opinions about those conditions in the Gemara, which is why there are different opinions in the Rishonim and the Achrayim about that. And finally, there's different ways of understanding one very important line of the Gemara, and that's going to affect the halacha as well. Okay, Rav Shesha says, on the view of him who maintains that one may replace it, it is permitted even on Shabbos. Meaning to say, according to the opinion of Beis Hillel, which is of course the halacha is always like Beis Hillel, that you're allowed to return something on Shabbos. right? Because Beis Shammai says you can't return on Shabbos. You can just leave it for before Shabbos. Beis Hillel says you're allowed to return on Shabbos. So according to the opinion that says you're allowed to, which is Beis Hillel, that's the halacha, you can even do it on Shabbos. Got it? That makes sense?
Replacing the pot.
Sorry?
Is that replacing the pot?
Putting it back. According to the opinion that you're allowed to put it back, you can put it back even on Shabbos.
When are we learning Chazarah? This is right now?
Right now.
This isn't next semester.
No, right now. I'm waiting for anybody to ask me a question about this statement.
How are you gonna do it on Shabbos if it's putting it back? Because we said we were allowed Shehiyah, but not on Shabbos.
No. Why not? The Mishnah said you're allowed.
Why even on Shabbat? Of course, you can do it before Shabbat, of course. No? You should be able to do it before Shabbat as well.
Even on Shabbos.
If you do it even on Shabbat, so why even on Shabbat? So, you can certainly do it before Shabbat. So the question is whether you can do it on Shabbat or not.
Right. That's exactly it. The obvious question, which we have to understand, is what does that mean, even on Shabbos? That's what Chazarah is. Chazarah is to put it back on Shabbos. If you're doing it before Shabbos, well, that's Shehiyah. That's something else. L'divrei ha'omer machzirin, this is the Hebrew. L'divrei ha'omer machzirin, according to the opinion, you can return it, which is Beis Hillel. Machzirin afilu b'Shabbos. You can even return it on Shabbos. What does that mean? I mean, that's what returning is. Returning is putting it back on Shabbos. So it's a very difficult piece. So I'll just tell you Rashi's pshat. You know what? Let's go through all the opinions right now, and then we'll
I mean,
continue.
obviously, it's not referring to Erev Shabbos. But what would be the problem returning it?
Rav said yesterday, Tosfos will there.
So Erev Shabbos is one of the opinions. So let's start with Rashi. Rashi says that when it says afilu b'Shabbos, it means even on Shabbos day. You might think that Chazarah is only mutter on Friday night, because on Friday night, if you take it off the fire, it's self-understood that you're planning to put it back because you want it for Shabbos day also. But if you take it off the fire on Shabbos day, then it seems that you were not intending to put it back, because most people, you take it off and you eat it and that's it, you're done with it. So putting it back is a chiddush because it's not expected. No. Even on Shabbos day you can do it.
Why is it not Chiddush on Friday night? Because he's still wanting.
Friday night, because probably you want to put it back for Shabbos day, so it doesn't look like you're changing your mind. It looks like that was the intention. But on Shabbos day, it might look like you're changing your mind. Still, you can do it. Now, the Ran says a whole nother thing, different shot. The Ran says that the chiddush is that you can return it even on Shabbos for the first time. You can put it back even on Shabbos, even though it was not on there when Shabbos came in. Meaning to say, we're going to learn in the Gemara many conditions that you have to keep for Chazar. You have to have it in your hand. Maybe you have to have it in mind. Maybe you can't transfer it to another pot. And then there's other conditions that the poskim add. It has to be fully cooked. It has to be still hot, and so on. The Rav Sheshes is coming and telling you, if you keep those conditions, you can put it back even if it was not on when Shabbos came in. That means right before Shabbos you took it off, but you kept it in your hand, and you were planning to put it back, and it's still hot, still in the same pot, all the conditions, whatever ones we hold of, as we'll see. And then you put it back a minute later, even though it's going on Shabbos for the first time.
On Shabbos, but you had it in your hand before Shabbos came, but you had in mind to return it in now.
All the conditions.
It's now Shabbos.
All the conditions, correct. Correct.
It's a run.
That's the Ran. Now the Ran takes that one step further. Huge chiddush. And it leads to tremendous leniency. The Ran says that the whole discussion that the Gemara has from now on is all about that case. Everything from now on that we're going to say, condition A, B, C, D, maybe all of them, maybe some of them, whatever we're going to see. That's all because you're putting it back on Shabbos for the first time. But if you would be putting it back on Shabbos, not for the first time, Shabbos morning, you want some cholent, take it, put it back for later in the afternoon. You don't have to keep these conditions. Almost none of them, according to the Ram. Very significant, lenient opinion. Conversely, we have Tosfos, who is just the opposite. He's strict, and he says, when it says you can return it even on Shabbos, what does it mean even on Shabbos? First of all, you can return it on Erev Shabbos with the conditions. And second of all, not just on Erev Shabbos, but on Shabbos too. Why would you have to keep conditions on Erev Shabbos? So Tosfos says that basically Chachamim made a decree, and they said that within a short span of time before Shabbos, which Tosfos explains what that span of time is, if we would allow you to take off and put back without the conditions, you might do that on Shabbos too. So we don't want you to do that. It's so close to Shabbos that if you would do it, it might lead to doing it on Shabbos. Basically, just for your information, we'll see it later, but that time span is the time that it takes to heat this food. How long would it take to heat this food from cold to hot? Whatever, depending on the food, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it is. Within those 15 minutes before Shabbos, if you take it off and you want to put it back on, you must keep these conditions. All right?
How much time before Shabbat?
However much time it takes to heat this food. So for every food, it will be different.
What about
From
1 hour?
cold to lettuce. If it's a huge pot, it takes an hour. Then for an hour, you have to keep the conditions.
According to him, even on Shabbos means even on Erev Shabbos.
No. It means even on Shabbos. For sure on Erev Shabbos, but even on Shabbos.
Chiddush is Shabbos, not Erev Shabbos.
Well, even on Shabbos, you can return it. On Erev Shabbos, you can return it with the conditions. And with the conditions, even on Shabbos. So those are the three
Even in
opinions.
Shabbat, the Chamin I take it in my hand. If the same time, let's say it's take to hit that to work at Chamin אותו ב-20 דקות, I can put it after 5 minutes? Less. No.
We're not talking about how long it has to be off the fire in your hands. You can take it off and put it back right away. The point is that within the amount of time it takes to cook that, to heat that food, within that amount of time before Shabbos, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is, that amount of time before Shabbos, if you want to take it off and put it back, you have to keep all the conditions that the Gemara is going to say. All right. Rav Oshia too holds that one may replace it. Machzirin means even on Shabbos. The proof to this is that Rav Oshia said, we were once standing before Rav Chia Rabbah. We brought up a kettle of hot water for him from the lower to the upper story, mixed the cup for him, and replaced it. That means they took whatever it was, the kettle from downstairs, brought it upstairs, and brought it back down. He doesn't mention the conditions, we'll see them later, but Rav Chia Rabbah held of it. He didn't say a word to us. Rav Zika said in the name of Rav Abba, in the name of Rav Tadoi, we learned this only if they are still in his hand. But if he set it down on the ground, it is forbidden. The word in Hebrew for this is oida beyadoi. It has to be in his hands. But if it's hinicha al gabe karka, if you put it on the ground, then he cannot put it back. Okay? So that's the first condition that we're learning in the Gemara. However, this condition is not universally accepted. Rav Ami observed that Rav Tadoi, who acted this way, acted for himself only. That means Rav Tadoi was being machmir on himself, and it's not that everybody agrees. But rather, Rav Chia said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, even if you put it on the ground, it's allowed. Okay, so you see the condition of putting it on the ground is a machloikis. Rav Dimi and Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda argue, both in the name of Rav Elazar. One says if the still in his hand that is permitted on the ground, it is forbidden, while the other maintains even if placed on the ground, it is still permitted. So they argue in the same argument Rav Ami and Rav Zurika have, if you have to keep the condition of keeping it in your hands or not. Chizkiah observed in Abaya's name. Okay, here's another condition. that we're about to learn. As to what you say, that if it is still in his hand, it is permitted, that was said only where it was his original intention to replace them. The word in Hebrew for this is daitoi lahachzir. His intention was to replace it. But if it was not his intention to replace it, it is forbidden. Right? If it was not daitoi lahachzir, it's forbidden. Hence it follows that if they were on the ground, even if it was his intention to replace them, it is forbidden. Okay, so according to the first version of Chizkiah in the name of Abaya, he's being more strict. And he's saying, besides the fact that it can't be on the ground, it also has to be that your intention is to replace it. That means you have to keep both conditions. One does not replace the other. It has to be in your hand, and you have to have the intention to return it. If you did not intend to return it, even if it's on the ground, it's no good. And even if it's in your hand, if you do not have the intention to return it, it's also no good. That's the first opinion of Chizkiah. The second opinion is, others say, Chizkiah said in Abaya's name. That's coming up. Others say, Chizkiah observed in Abaya's name, as to what you say, that if they're on the ground, it is forbidden. That was said only if it was not his original intention to replace them. But if it was his original intention to replace them, it is permitted. And it follows that if they're in his hand, even if it was an intention to replace them, it is permitted. So according to the second version of Chizkiah and Abaya, he's actually giving a heter. He's saying, even if it's on the ground, if you have the intention, you can put it back. And finally, we have another two conditions that are brought here that are left with the question. Rav Yirmiyah propounded, I don't even know what the Hebrew for that is, but I have to look that up. It's a good word. Probably Boy Rav Yirmiyah. Exactly. Boy Rav Yirmiyah. I don't know why they have to use that word propounded, but anyway, Rav Yirmiyah asked, what if he hung them on a staff or placed them on a couch? Taloi b'makel or yenichal al gabe hamita.
As long as it's on the floor. That's
Oh.
the point.
That's the question. So what if you put it hanging from a stick, or you put it down on a bed? And the point of those, it's not the normal place. So it's not in your hand, but it's also obviously not in a place where it's supposed to remain. Nobody wants a pot hanging from a stick. Nobody wants a pot on their bed. It's clearly not where it belongs. So maybe that's good enough. And the second question Rav Ashi asked, what if he emptied them from one kettle to another? So if you transfer the pot from the contents from one pot to the other, is that allowed? Maybe not, because maybe now that you put in a new pot, it's a new thing. It's not Chazarah. The whole point of Chazarah is that you're putting it back. It's a continuation. Maybe if it's in a new pot, it's not a continuation anymore. It's like a new thing. The question stands. Teku. The questions stand. These two questions remain. We don't answer them. All right, so if you want to take a lenient position, one might say there's absolutely no conditions of Chazarah. Just look at the Gemara. According to Rav Ami, Rav Tadoi's thing about not putting on the ground is his own chumrah. It's not minadin. Oh, completely cooked. This Gemara doesn't discuss that condition because that goes without saying. That is not a condition of Chazarah. That is a condition of Bishul. You understand? Here we're learning the Derabanan rules of Chazarah, whereas the D'oraisa rule that you're not allowed to cook on Shabbos, that goes without saying. So, but that's obviously a very important condition, but it's just not listed in the Gemara.
Well, because if you're putting it back on the open flame.
That's also true.
No.
That is a condition, and that is mentioned in the Mishnah, actually. The Mishnah, this Gemara is explaining the Mishnah. If you look back in the Mishnah, it says, Kir shesku b'kasha v'glava, nois v'la tavshil, b'gef z'v'etzelitin, ad sheyigroif, ad sheyitin eseifer. Right? You can't put it until it's covered, and there's two opinions about the Mishnah, whether it's supposed to say lo yitin or lo yachzir. You can't put it, or you can't return it. Some say you can't even put it, but some say you can put it, but you just can't return it. That's Hananya. Hananya says you can put it before Shabbos, as long as it's half cooked, but you can't return it. So basically, everybody agrees that you can't return it.
Cannot.
You cannot return it ad sheyigrif. That's what the Mishnah says, until it's covered.
It's not because we're talking about something fully, sorry.
Covered. The flame has to be
Yeah,
covered.
the flame
No
has to be
question
covered.
about it. No question
It
has
doesn't have to
to.
be fully cooked.
It has to be fully cooked, of
It's
course.
Go for two.
That's a condition from before Shabbos. When you're not, there's no isser to cook before Shabbos. There's only a concern that you may forget and stoke it on Shabbos. But when it comes to putting it back on Shabbos, you're not allowed to cook on Shabbos. Putting it back on Shabbos is going to cook it. So that's why it has to be fully cooked.
Even
And it's fine in stomach tomorrow, yeah?
No.
Totally. Yeah.
Well, according to Sfar, not
Mechaber.
according to the Machaber, it has to be some rally even for Shehiyah. Of course, for Atman. Oh, one second.
Chazarah. I'm talking about Chazarah now.
One second. Gotta think about that. According to the Machaber, it doesn't have to be Masam Rally if it's covered, right? If it's covered, it doesn't have to be.
So, okay.
And you could do Chazarah also as long as it's covered, even if it's Tav Yafaleh. But stomach Yafaleh is not a problem, if that's your question.
For Chazarah by Mechaber?
That's correct. If it's covered.
if you take down the pot, but even if it's not fully cooked, but it doesn't get cold, colder than the absolute, why can you put it back? It's still hot.
Who said you can't?
But you said that you cannot put it back because.
No, if it's covered, if the heat is covered, and you keep all these conditions as we'll see, then it's okay. Okay, now again, the condition about putting it down, machlokes. Condition about having the intention, Chizkiah, 2 versions, machlokes. Is that right?
As you said.
No. No, I take that back. The 2 versions of Chizkiah are both accepting that you need one of the conditions. The question is if you need both. The first version of Chizkiah is you need both. You need it both to be in your hands and to have the intention. The second is no, if you have the intention, it can be on the ground. But without the intention, if it's on the ground, it's no good. So at least that one condition we do have according to Chizkiah. And finally, the question of hanging it, not answered. The question of emptying it from one to the other, also not answered. So on the one hand, we could be lenient and we could say, Safek derabanan lekula. We have so many opinions. Why not? On the other hand, the Beis Yosef brings, in the name of, I think it's the Rosh actually, that because Shabbos is very strict and the details of Shabbos are very complex, we are going to be strict. We mentioned it yesterday about the definition of Ma'achal ben Rusoi, which I want to get to right now actually because you had a question. But we said yesterday you have to be strict on Ma'achal ben Rusoi. Make sure it's half cooked. Why? It's only the Rabbanon. No, Shabbos is strict. We want to be strict. So the same thing here, that we are going to be strict on these conditions. Within the Achronim, there are some that are more strict and some that are less strict. But in general, we do take a more strict stance. I do want to address Rafael's question from yesterday, even though it's a Shehiyah question, but let's just go back to it before we continue. Rafael asked yesterday, why do we give such great importance to this Ben Rusoi fellow? What did he do to deserve this moment in fame?
Did I even ask that? I had that question also. I don't know if that was my question.
What was the question?
The question was why, that was one of my brothers, but I thought that was more like Kabbalistic, I don't know, like Hasidic, Kabbalistic.
Yeah.
It says like, why do we mention Egypt all the time? They had a schus of some sort that I guess they got us closer to Hashem, so we meant, I don't know. But
Okay.
anyways, the
Okay.
point is, so that my question was, why do we define
Yep.
edible food, minimum edible food, by this crazy wacko that was stealing food and eating it at its earliest.
No, we didn't accuse him of stealing food. He was a ganef in general, and he was always on the run. So he would cook and eat food that was half raw, but not that he specifically stole the food.
No, he'd go to the house and steal, and he would eat it. Oh, I thought that was the case.
No, I know there are some
He's
people
just-
who do that.
He's just a wacko that eats raw food.
No, he couldn't, he just didn't have that time to cook the
Didn't have
food.
the
So
time.
he was
He was
stealing
always
so
on the
much,
run.
wasn't he?
He was always on the run. Yeah, he was on the run.
Chasing after him?
Chasing him. He had jobs to do. He had stuff to,
He didn't have time to cook it, so he cooked
To
a
the
little
next-
bit, so
to the next
he couldn't
size.
afford it, so.
We got in a big argument
I hope
about
that's
this, because
not
I was saying that the whole thing is that we don't want somebody to touch the flame. What kind of person touches the flame? Somebody who doesn't have patience. You can't wait for your food. You can't wait for Shabbos to be over. You want to plink the knobs. You want to poke the coals. That's a thief. You're the kind of person.
yeah, but
that
we're not
steals
writing the
time.
Shulchan Aruch for thieves.
You're stealing, but that's what it is that you're stealing from Shabbos. It's the same mindset. The same kind of person that's running here to there to go steal all
But
the
why
time
are we
is the same kind of
accusing? Why
person
are we
that-
accusing Klal Yisrael of being that way? That's a very heavy accusation.
Sometimes we need to be real strict on ourselves.
I have a totally different take on this. The point is that when he ate it, it was edible. He didn't eat raw food. It wasn't crazy. He cooked it to the minimum of edibility.
Yeah, but.
Oh, one second. He cooked it to the minimum of edibility. Now, since it is edible, the fact that he ate it means that it's edible because he didn't eat raw food. So therefore, when it reaches that stage, a person is no longer so concerned about it. It's not like it's the end of the world.
Yeah, but majority of people, let's say even more than the majority, would not eat that food.
Why not?
If they
Nobody's half
needed
cooked
to,
meat.
they would. Meat, actually, plenty of people
Okay,
eat half
maybe
cooked.
it's a better-
That's
that's-
half-cooked
chicken.
Meat, plenty of people do. Eggs, plenty of people do.
Chicken's a.
Okay, but my point is that of course we're not suggesting that a person is going to eat it that way. But what we're saying is that he is not bohu. He's not urgently nervous, pulling his hair out of his head. What am I going to do? The guests are coming. It's going to be
I
fine.
mean, I can even serve it like this.
I could even serve it like this.
Yeah.
A, 2 points. A, I could even serve it like this. And B, this is when Shabbos comes in. The guests don't show up the moment Shabbos comes in. They have to daven. They have to come over. They chat a little bit. You know what I mean? They sit
So
down,
that's-
whatever. So there's going to be time for it to fully cook anyway.
That would be a good answer. The first answer, I would even serve it like this, then my question comes into play. Rov ha'olam would not.
Yeah, but you're not going to
You
be.
put that on the
that-
table, no one's eating it.
The point is that you're not going to be so desperate. You know it's Shabbos. Talking about a from Jew, he knows it's Shabbos. When when he loses himself, maybe he'll forget it's Shabbos. But if it's a manageable problem, we don't suggest,
Why is
we don't
it-
suspect, I should say,
Why is it manageable?
because
He wouldn't
okay,
serve
it's
it.
not
No
the
one
best,
would
but
eat
it's not
Think about
a
it, 30
trauma.
minutes.
You understand? It's not a trauma.
Minutes. I do this every day. Yeah, so I see meat, the way it's cooked. Within minutes, it goes from medium rare to medium well. Within minutes, literally. So you're talking about.
it. But that's the second.
That's the second part.
That's the Rav's second answer. The first answer of, I would even serve it like this. Why do we depend on this guy?
Because the
Why
point
don't we
is,
go
the
over-
point isn't that he would serve it. The point is that he's not desperate. That's all. Shabbos is Shabbos. He doesn't forget about Shabbos.
Don't worry.
In his moment of desperation, he might forget. When he's not desperate, he's not going to forget. That's all.
Say that one
He's-
more time? He's not this, he's not that.
A frum Jew hopefully remembers that it's Shabbos. When he is so desperate because he has guests coming and there's nothing ready to eat, he might lose himself and forget that it's Shabbos. But if it's edible, even though he wouldn't normally serve it, that's not going to make him lose his mind. See what I'm saying? Yes. Question?
Yeah, Ramon makes a comment about that. It's parallel about the events over there. He's making a comment about that.
Got to see it.
No, number 9.
Okay, yeah, it's an interesting point. He draws a parallel from the Ben Soyer Moira, that he eats also meat that is not fully cooked, but not fully raw either. But he doesn't say exactly whether it's like Ben Brusoy or not, so I'm not sure about that. Okay. Let us all right. Let us learn the Shulchan Aruch, and then we'll learn the Shulchan Aruch Harav. And we're going to see that there are significant differences between the opinion of the Mechaber, the Ramah, and the Shulchan Aruch Harav, as far as the conditions of Chazarah. All right. Kira, Shehi Grufo Ktuma. Halacha Beis. I sent this out last week, the link to it.
Shulchan Aruch.
Got it? Yeah? ShulchanAruch.com.
Okay.
All right, we'll start with that. Oh, but that's only in the English. Whoever wants the Hebrew, where is it in Hebrew? There it is. All right, I'm sending out a link to the Hebrew for whoever wants that in the email. Oh, I'm sending it right now.
According to all opinions, up to a third cooked, let's say a quarter cooked, and you put it on for Shkia before Shabbos, is not allowed.
One more time.
Between Yatzoletikva to a third cooked, L'kule Alma, B'diavad, even not good B'diavad, if you have it, if you did Shkia with it, it's not allowed.
Uncovered fat. Unless you intended to eat it the next day, in which case we have 3 Rishonim that permit it, and the Mishnah Berurah says you could be somech on them b'diavad. B'diavad means after the fact. It's already done, you can eat it.
Shabbos.
Yeah. Well, not Shabbos already. It's already cooked. If it's Shabbos, besides the muktzah issue, which I'm not sure about, you could still take it off. You understand? But you realized after it's fully cooked. What do I do now? It's okay. You can eat it. Before it's half cooked, you would have a chiyuv to take it off, although it might be a muktzah issue. I think it's a muktzah issue. I never resolved that. I don't know.
It's not allowed. It's not allowed by that, doesn't it?
Yeah, I don't see how it would be allowed. It would seem you would have to leave it there because it's muktzah, and once it's half cooked, it's already mutter. So I mean, b'diavad mutter, so just leave it. Okay. Kira, you should have received it. Kira shehi grufa uktuma. A pot, a kira which is covered. But not like der me'alel, a sieve base. And you took off the pot from it. Afilu b'Shabbos, even on Shabbos. Mutter la'achzir, you're allowed to put it back. Kol zman shehi roisachas, as long as it is hot. Okay? Base. I'm in base. I don't know where you are. I'm in halacha base. Okay? The point is that it has to be hot. If it's not hot, even if it's fully cooked, it goes back to being raw, halachically. Talking about anything that's liquid in it. Once it cools down, it's like if you would put it back, you'd be cooking on Shabbos.
That's regardless of every other condition.
Exactly. If it's not hot, it's a problem.
That's the lettuce. This says so.
Yeah. We're going to learn later the Ramah is maybe a bit lenient even if it's not yet, but it has to be hot. Hot enough to serve guests. Warmish, according to the Ramah. According to the Mechaber, it has to be yatsa lettuce. Now, if it's what if it is totally dry? In which case, there's the rule of ein bishul achar bishul, even if it's cold. We're going to see about that in the Shulchan Aruch Harav. So, v'oida biyadai.
It doesn't matter where you put this.
What do you mean? V'oida biyadai, still in your hands. V'lo yinichal gabei karka, and he did not put it down on the ground. Ramah adds v'daita lahachzira, and his intention is to return it. That's the Ramah's addition. V'dafka al gaba avaletoicha asur. Now, this is another condition that we did not learn in this Gemara, but it's mentioned earlier in the Gemara, and that is you can only put it on top, but not inside. You cannot put it inside a kira. You can only put it on top of a kira, not inside. Well, our tanurs is like a kira of those days, and you cannot put inside a kira because the way they used to cook is that cooking on top of the kira was like a less powerful form of cooking. Putting it in was like a more powerful form of cooking, and Chazarah, they didn't want to allow the more powerful form of cooking. It looked like you're really cooking. Even though you keep all the other conditions, when you put it in, it's like a more serious act of cooking. They call that mechzik mavashal. It looks like cooking. So they didn't allow it. Now it's an interesting thing that the Mechaber does not discuss when it's partially in and partially out. In the Beis Yosef, he mentions two opinions, whether you can, because they used to hang it on the kira had an opening. You could either put it all the way in or you could hang it on that opening. So it was sitting partially in and partially out. He doesn't explicitly say what he means when he says l'soicha, but the way the Mefarshim understand is that he's only forbidding it if you put it all the way in. If you hang it a little bit in, a little bit out, it's okay. And this is relevant for a crock pot, which is basically hanging in, but the edge of it is out. Question?
The karka that Mara mentions is also a counter.
Yeah. Any place
It's down.
that is the final stop, that does not appear that it doesn't belong there.
So the opposite
On the
of down
contrary, the ground doesn't belong there. But in those days, I don't know if they had countertops. I don't know if they had that concept. So the ground is where you would put things. But nowadays, the countertop is like the ground for sure. Okay. What do you mean? I'm not sure. Because the sides are not touching, it's hanging. I'm saying, but when you cover the top, the sides are still not. The sides are still not. The top, where it hangs from that there it does touch. But further down, there's a space in between. I mean, it's a machlokes, but those that are mekel, I don't know if they would be machmer with a towel on top. I don't think so. I don't think so.
When you have the pot on the glove, you're not allowed to cover it, so it should not falling on the side.
No, on the top only you could, but if it goes on the sides, you can't.
Yeah, but then he said it's so
Okay,
okay.
more on the side, but it's not gonna be exactly attached when the cover, so the semi-cock one.
No,
Why
no,
not?
because a towel is a movable item. And that's the whole concept of hatmana, was like coals that you could wrap it around. But a hard surface like the metal of the crock pot or the cheres, whatever it's made out of, that's not something you could stick close even if you wanted. It's not, doesn't apply. I mean, that's the simple halacha. But Reb Shlomo Zalman was strict. It's a nice chumrah, but it's not simple. It's not simple. Okay. So the point is, now the Machaber just throws in an important piece of information that since we said it has to be goruf v'katam, did we say that? Yeah, kirishi gufru ptuma. It has to be goruf v'katam. So the Machaber points out a tanur, which we don't really have today. But I'm saying the tanurim of those days where goruf v'katam didn't help, right? Because the heat of them was so hot that even if you covered it, it was still very hot. So there would be no way you could put it on a tanur, no matter what, even if it's not in it, just on it, because the heat was so great, it was like an open flame. So that's just a side point, which by the way does apply in our ovens, even though our ovens are not. But in terms of them being an open flame, it's pretty much an open flame.
Inside the oven.
Inside the oven, yeah, inside the oven. That would be a problem. Okay, now the Ramah adds, "V'dafka shatavshel mavushel kol tzorkoi," only if it is fully cooked.
He explains the Mechaber actually, right?
Yes, everybody agrees to that. Chaber doesn't mention it. I guess he considers it obvious. But in the Beis Yosef, he does mention it. 100%. It has to be fully cooked, because otherwise that's actual bishul on Shabbos. Now the truth is, there's machlokes Rishonim. We're going to get to it in Shin Yud Ches. That some say once something is cooked k'maichal ben drusoi, like our famous bandit friend, it is absolutely no problem to put it back, because it's considered ein bishul achar bishul. It's already edible, and further cooking of it makes no difference. Just like metztamek v'yafalai is not considered cooking, right? To put it back, even though it's going to taste better, that's not cooking. Ein bishul achar bishul. It's not significant. So there are Rishonim that say the same thing applies once it's cooked k'maichal ben drusoi. However, that's not the main halacha, and for practical purposes, it has to be fully cooked.
So Ramah doesn't hold this way, obviously.
Neither.
We follow that.
אין מאכל בישול אחר בישול, only במשהו יבש.
משהו יבש, או אם זה עדיין חם, אם זה לח ועדיין חם. Okay, a little bit further in the Rambam. V'oz muter lahachzir v'afil lekira acheres. Then you're allowed to return it even to another kira. It's another chiddush, by the way. The Rambam says you can return it to a different kira. It happened when I was in Eretz Yisrael once, and we were trying to make our Shabbos clock and the plata and whatever. Anyway, it didn't work, and we had guests coming, and and it went off. So I went to our apartment was near a hotel. Went to them, tried to convince them to let me put it on their plot there, whatever they had. There was no chance. You know. They have a hechsher, they're not putting in somebody else's pot, but whatever. No, even more. Because in bishul achar bishul, it's already cooked, still hot, more hot, less hot, doesn't make a difference. Just like the fact is, it could have been in your hand for 5 minutes. You know, you took it off, you were serving. Now you want to put it back 5 minutes later, it cooled off. You're putting it back even on the same one, you're going to make it hotter. Still, ein bishul achar bishul. That's not a significant difference. right? So the same thing from one kira to another, as long as they're both hot, obviously.
Regarding the Tanakh, the Gemara says you're not allowed to put that because it's too hot. But if you put the black on this, on top of it, it doesn't put the pot.
No.
So, no?
Didn't work. It didn't work because they were so hot that even when you covered the coals, it was too hot anyway. It was like you didn't cover it basically. Yeah, it doesn't make a difference. Just like you can't cover it on the bottom, you can't cover it on the top. It was so hot it didn't make a difference. Okay. I have a minute special called Sarka Safiloisa Kira. If it's not fully cooked, you can return it even to the same Kira. Okay, then the Ramah goes into the opinion of the Ran, which we will, Emir Hashem, get back to.
You're allowed to return it into full water,
Less than Yatz boy is a machlokes. According to the Machaber, no. According to the Ramah, if it's still warm enough to feed to your guests, you can return it. So a little bit less than Yatz boy. All right, we're going to switch over to the Shulchan Aruch Harav before we finish the Ramah, because I want to point out the contrasts. Notice the Ramah and Mechaber, neither of them talked about putting it down on a bed or transferring it from one to another. Notice that. And also notice that the Mechaber left out the idea of daitoi lahachzir. He only mentioned putting it on the ground, and he left out the concept of daitoi lahachzir, right? So it seems like the Mechaber is paskening like the opinion of Chizkiah that actually no, he's not passing like Chizkiah at all. It's the Rambam. The Rambam says, and the Rambam doesn't mention Dait al-Hachzer at all, even though both versions of Chizkiah say Dait al-Hachzer, except that one says that you need on the ground, in your hand plus Dait al-Hachzer. The other opinion says you could have it on the ground as long as you have Dait al-Hachzer, right? As long as you intend to return it. The Mechaber doesn't mention it at all because the Rambam holds that the opinions in the Gemara that don't mention it, right? Earlier in the Gemara, Rav Zrika, Rav Tadoi, they only talk about the ground. They don't talk about Dait al-Hachzer. They don't hold up Dait al-Hachzer. They don't hold you have to return it. You have to have intention, and therefore he leaves it out. Okay, let us read the Alter Rebbe and see some interesting points.
This is the one. When the Gemara says Dait al-Hachzer, that's his own opinion. That's like
yes, although it's not his own per se, it is.
It looks like as if he's going continuing one flow with the Mechaber. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. The Ramah does that sometimes.
Yeah, but Dait al-Hachzer, as if he's continuing in one sentence, one flow with the Mechaber.
The Ramah does that sometimes.
As if the Mechaber means that, you just didn't say it.
The Ramah does that sometimes. Now, when the Ramah says something that is definitely an argument with the Mechaber, he'll say v'yesh omrim. Whereas when he says something that even if it's an argument, but it's not an explicit argument, meaning to say the Ramah, the Mechaber doesn't specifically say even if you
didn't know really.
No, not that he didn't know. It's just that he doesn't want to say it's machlokes if it's not an obvious machlokes, even though it is. You understand? The Mechaber didn't say even though you intended not to return it. You understand? If the Ramah, the Mechaber had said that, he would say v'yesh omrim, whatever. But here the Mechaber didn't discuss it one way or the other, even though he left it out, which means he doesn't hold of it. The Ramah doesn't say v'yesh omrim. That's just Ramah's style. But you'll find that in the Ramah often. He only says v'yesh omrim if it's a clear machlokes.
So, tricky to the reader.
Yeah.
And everyone holds this is what the case is, that the Rabbi is voicing his own opinion, not the Mechaber.
Yes.
That's the case.
Yeah.
Does the Mechaber see the Hagaot of Ramah?
That's a good question. I don't know.
They lived in the same time?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mentioned in the first year that the Ramah had already written the entire Orach Chaim and Yoredeya up till Hilchas Chala, his own Shulchan Aruch, when he got the Mechaber Shulchan Aruch.
They were friendly. They conversed.
I don't know.
Communicated.
One was in Sfas, one was in Krakow.
Which Krakow? Poland?
Krakow in Poland, yeah.
Such Berlin.
The Ramah definitely respected the Mechaber. He writes about him, very strong words. Why he basically ripped up what he wrote, and instead wrote the notes, because he doesn't need to replace what the Beis Yosef wrote. Okay. Kirish Yisukul Bakash V'Glava. Oy afilu b'gavs v'eitzim ala shigufa u'ktuma. V'not like them ela bein bo yom mishach hashecha. U'bo lachzir la b'Shabbos. Okay. I'm just reading it through quickly, but when I translate, you'll pay attention and you'll notice a chiddush here. A kira that you heated with straw, stubble, or even with wood and olive refuse, but it was covered. And you took the pot from it, whether on Friday or when it got dark. And you want to return it on Shabbos. Did you notice that? The Alter Rebbe sneaks in the chiddush of the Ran, and he paskins like it. Now, most opinions don't hold of the Ran in terms of the Ran holding that when you take it off on Shabbos and return it on Shabbos, you don't need the conditions of Chazarah. Now we're going to get to most people don't hold of it. But the fact is that the Ran holds that when you take it off on Friday and return it on Friday night, from before Shabbos, after Shabbos, you can do it as long as you have the conditions of Chazarah. Ran says it. Nobody argues on it. So that we'll accept from the Ran. We won't accept his next chiddush and say that on Shabbos itself you can do it without the conditions. But the chiddush that you can do it from Friday to Shabbos with the conditions, since he said it and nobody argues, we're going to keep it.
Itself, the chiddush is you don't need those conditions.
No, that we're not going to accept. That's already the next stage. But the first chiddush that he says, that if you take it off, Shabbos comes in at 6 p.m. exactly. You took it off at 5:59. You want to put it back at 6:01? As long as you have the conditions, you can do it. That is okay. Because it says afilu b'Shabbos.
Yeah, but why? What was the bottom line? The underlying reasoning for this? You mentioned that
even if you were turning it on Shabbos the first time, it's allowed. Not just to take it off on Shabbos and put it back on Shabbos, but even if you're taking it off before Shabbos and putting it back on Shabbos the first time, even so it's allowed. Okay.
You gave a reason why you needed those conditions. After that, not on Shabbos.
Because on Shabbos, when you took it off on Shabbos, you put it back on Shabbos, it looks like it's a continuation even without the conditions. When you took it off before Shabbos, and now on Shabbos you're putting it back mamash for the first time, it looks like a new beginning. So there you have to show that it's not a new beginning. You have to show that it's a continuation. Okay. Im oidem biyadai. If it's still in your hands, you didn't take it out of your hands from when you took it off the kira until you're putting it back. Now we have another condition the Alter Rebbe is adding here. But like pina mimena hatav, you did not transfer it to another pot. This is the question of Rav Ashi. And the Magen Avram says we should be strict like Rav Ashi, even though Rav Ashi didn't resolve the question. It was an open-ended question. The Gemara said take or didn't answer it. But because of the strictness of Shabbos, we should be strict even on that. So the Alter was passed like the Magen Avram, more strict than the Ramah even, and by the way, more strict than the Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah does not hold of this particular condition. According to the Mishnah Berurah, you could change from one to another and then still put it back. A very practical application of this is
You put it back, you didn't put it before, but the same block, you have to have something else.
what do you mean?
Yesterday you said if you put it in your lap before Shabbos, and just before that you put the temperature a little bit higher,
Yep.
it's not good.
Yep.
Okay, so now if you prepare all the black and you put anything on it,
And you what?
you didn't put any part of it.
Okay.
So you don't think about the fire because you're not using it. And suddenly you come and take something and you put on it. Well, Shabbos is there.
Where are you taking it from?
It was in your hand.
But where was it before?
That's the-
On the plata.
Hmm?
On the plata?
No, according to the simon of what we're reading, it was in his hand before Shabbos.
But it has to still be hot. What do you mean?
I don't know, it was not something else, I don't know. It was
On an oven.
on the oven, we took it out, and now I put on the black.
That's okay.
There's nothing on the black, so it means that you didn't have the machshava about the fires that you prepared.
What do you mean? The
When you have to
blech,
use it.
when you cover it, that's the mashava. You covered it, that's all.
So you cover it, and then put the fire back on, you said it's not good anymore.
Yeah, but you didn't put the fire back on. You put the fire back on or you didn't put it back on.
No, I'm about to like
Okay.
the concept.
The concept is if you covered it, that's all. Just because you didn't have something on it, why did you cover it? You covered it because you were showing that you don't need it.
But if you don't put anything, it's not showing that you don't need it.
Well, why did you put it there? You put a blech on.
Yeah.
So that's showing that you don't need it.
So my point is, if you're having your pot, according to what we're reading now, is allowing you to putting it back on the block, okay? If it was holding it before Shabbos, okay? And then Shabbos is in, and then when you put it on, you're allowed to put it, correct?
Yeah.
Even so, there's nothing else on the block.
Yeah.
The first time you're putting it on.
Yeah. I mean, it's coming from another heat source, right? It's still hot, so it's coming from something else, and it's in your hand the whole time. So, even though there's nothing else on it, that's okay. Doesn't say there has to be anything else on it. Okay. A very practical application of this question of pina mimechem lamechem, of transferring it from one pot to the other pot, is as follows. Very practical question. Your cholent is burning and you want to add water to it. Now the Beis Yosef himself holds that you cannot add water because when you take the water out of the pot, it cools down. And then you put it back in to the other pot, it heats up. But let's say, according to the Rishonim, that hold that you're allowed to, which is how the Ashkenazim pass. So you want to take water and add it to the cholent. So all of these conditions you have to keep, because you're basically taking water from the fire and putting it onto the cholent, which is also on the fire. So you have to keep all of these conditions. The problem is if you're going to pour it from the kettle into the cholent, or maybe even from the urn onto the cholent, meaning to say, there's one way if you have a kettle, like the old-fashioned kettles where you actually had a metal kettle on the blech, you know what I mean? Nowadays the kettles are mostly electric, so whatever. Yes, so if you pick it up, you leave the cholent where it is, you open the top of the cholent, you pour the water in. That's one option.
In the crock pot or on the black?
Either one, as long as it has a blech on it. If it's in the crock pot, it has to have a foil, or it's on the blech. Either one.
And you in the machshava to put it back.
Foil where?
Between and the pot.
Every time you do that?
You don't have to, but if you want to do Chazarah, if you want to put it back, you have to have it. And here you're putting water into it. That's like Chazarah.
Shouldn't be like holding it and putting water, it should be on.
Second creation to creation.
I don't know. I'm not sure about
You have to
that.
hold it, and then you have to be able to completion.
I'm not sure if you have to hold it. Not sure if you have to hold it.
Right, you're saying-
Any type of product visual while it's on the fire.
I'm not sure if you have to hold it. I'm not sure. I'm sorry.
It's burnt down, then you took a ladle or you took.
Oh, one second. One second. The other option is you have an urn, hot water urn. You want to you can't bring the urn to the blech or to the plata because it's plugged in. So you leave that there, but you take the cholent over here and you want to just turn on the hot water and let it go into the cholent.
By the way, no?
Oh, so there's an issue because the steam of the cholent is fleshik. It's going to go up. It's going to go into the kettle. It's going to go into the urn. And obviously, you don't want that urn to be fleshik. You want it to be parv. You want to use it for your coffee or whatever. So there's different eitzot. There's different ways around it. But the point is, according to the Mishnah Berurah, you have a very simple way. You can use pina mimechem lamechem. You can use this idea of transferring it from one keli to another. Take a cup, water into the cup, and pour it from the cup into the chalent pot. L'chaya.
Yeah, but the chance is clearly showing that the cup is cliche,
So what?
so it's poor.
So what?
So you close the water to get hot.
So what?
But you said before, you cannot make the water
I-
cold down and then.
We just said before that even though it's cold, as long as it's yad lettuce, but you can put it back.
Cliche, it's not clearly.
What does it have to do?
But you're.
Even in a kli rishon,
Not to that, you're not allowed to move it to
Tishma.
the pot.
even in a kli rishon, if you left it off the fire for 20 minutes, so it went down from, let's say it was boiling, it was 212. Now it went down to 150. You're going to put it back on the thing, it's going to go back to 212. What's the heter? No, it's okay. Ein bishul achar bishul. So the same thing in a kli sheni, it doesn't have the power to cook something else, but it's still hot. Ein bishul achar bishul. Yes?
So why you were having, you can have cold water, what's the big deal?
Cold water is bishul de'oraisa.
You just
What's
said
that?
it has to stay hot.
Water,
to be
you
hot
can
water.
drink it.
What?
Water is drinkable the way it is also.
No, that's still bishul
It
de'oraisa.
will touch the hot.
Sorry,
and
that's
it's
still
boiling.
bishul de'oraisa. To heat up cold water is bishul
This
de'oraisa.
is only for Ashkenaz, you know?
Only for Ashkenaz. Yeah.
Why would Chaver not?
Beis Yosef brings down Rabbeinu Yoina, who says that when you pour out of a keli, so because that pour is no longer able to cook something else, because the Iru Mikli Rishon cannot cook something. I can cook a K'dei Klipa, but it can't really cook. So, and then you put it into a Kli Rishon, which has the power to cook something else. That is like cooking itself. That's like bishul. To bring something from a state where it can cook something else, where it cannot, to be able to cook something else, that's like bishul already. So, according to that, you cannot. There's no way you can add hot water to that because it always has to go through the air.
Sephardim
In between.
here, so for Sephardim, that's all, will not be good.
You're not allowed to do that. That's why the Machaber gives you the other thing to just put it on top of an empty pot, to remove it. Talking about a burning challah, you just make it not as hot. That's all. Okay.
Water.
I'm sorry.
I think you mentioned also a bag full of water that's inside the popping bag we need the water. It's already in the chalent. A cooking bag full of water in the chalent.
And then what?
When you want the water, pop it. Pop the bag with the water going.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. That's interesting. Okay.
But what in the case that the water into the slab cannot get any steam upstairs because it's a pan. And when you press, the water come out. So, and you still hold it. So the machine is not get mixed. It's not get like, it's still power. Installation. You already took it from out next to the water region. You press, the water come out, boiling water into the cooking pot, goes back.
Yeah, but the point is the steam goes up to that
Yes.
that spigot where it comes out. So it could be that it's still making it.
You can just move it, still when the water come out.
That's true.
So,
That's true. You could do it in a way that the steam doesn't reach. If you do it further down, you know what I mean? You let the steam evaporate, wait a few minutes, and anyway, there won't be any steam. Or just to make sure, just put it lower down.
That's why you need to come with Salam Halab. It's about the steam study.
Zat Hashem.
It wouldn't be an issue for, let's just, who cares about, let's say I don't care about my kettle or whatever it is, I forgot what it's called. the
Urn?
Urn. So if Ashkenazim are allowed to directly, if it needs however much water, just pour from the hot source inside your jar.
Yeah.
There's no, someone told me that it's not lachatchila, but most arts machlokes. I once asked an Ashkenazi to do it for me, and he said it's not. So don't do it. It's not lachatchila.
Why?
I don't know. That's what he told me. So I thought, okay.
What was the question?
Question was is it lachatchila for an Ashkenazi to add water to a chalent in this way? I personally don't see why not. I don't see.
You mean from, yeah.
You're a little bit loud, Yossi, but go ahead.
Oh, no, it's okay.
Question?
No.
Okay, very good. You want to return it when it's still in the same pot on the kira. You're allowed to return it on Shabbos. I'm in the Shulchan Aruch Harav Sif Yudalet. If your intention was to return it afterwards,
You must have that.
you must have that intention. This is the following the Ramah. Listen here, the Alter Rebbe is explaining the concept behind these conditions. The concept behind the conditions is to show that it's a continuation. Very simple. By keeping it in your hand, by intending to return it, and by not transferring it from one part to the other, you are showing that it's a continuation. That's the main objective of all the conditions of Chazarah, to show that it's not a new Shehiyah, but that it is a Chazarah. Even Erev Shabbos, but even Shabbos on Shabbos, either one. If you didn't keep any of these conditions, either you didn't intend to return, or you put it down even once, or you transferred it to another pot, it's already nullified. The first Shehiyah is nullified. So then it's like you're putting it down on Shabbos in the first place. So what? So what if you're putting it down on Shabbos in the first place? The heat is covered, it's fully cooked, it's still hot. What's the problem? The Chacham only permitted you to return, never to put something on Shabbos on the kira in the first place, even though there is no actual bishul. You're going to a called circuits, they're already fully cooked. There's no prohibition to reheat or to make it even hotter. This very pot, listen carefully, this very pot you could put next to a fireplace in a place that's Yatzer Letters Boy. Because it's not a normal way to cook. Understand? So it's not a problem of original Shehiyah to put it there because it doesn't look like you're cooking. And it's not actual cooking because it's fully cooked and it's still hot. But nevertheless, to put it on a kira or on a, anything we use to cook, any normal way of cooking, that looks like cooking. To put it on something in the first place on Shabbos, where you normally cook, looks like you're doing an act of cooking. When you put it on a kira, where it's a normal place to cook, it looks like he is cooking in the first place on Shabbos. Like we said in the Ramah, if your intention was to return it and you kept it in your hands, you can return it not just to the same kira, but also to a different kira. Now, the Alter brings in a new thing, which is originally in the Yerushalmi. Let's say you have a pot that's in a hatmana situation, not on a heat source, but insulated by blankets and pillows, so it's plenty hot. You want to take it out of those pillows and blankets and put it onto the blech. No, that's already not allowed. Because the hatmana is hatmana, even though it's nice and hot, it's still not on the fire. So now you're putting it actually on the fire for the first time. Also, that's like you're putting it on originally. So what about the opposite? What if you have it on the blech when Shabbos comes in, and you want to take it off and put it in the pillows and the blankets instead of the blech? Let's say your blech is on a timer, it's about to go off, but it's still on right now. You want to take it off and put it in pillows and blankets. That's also no good. Why? Because you're doing a hatmana on Shabbos. Now, hatmana on Shabbos is not allowed even in a way that does not add heat. Even just in pillows and blankets is not allowed. So, unless you did it from before Shabbos.
Even if it's not on the fire?
Even not on the fire.
It's the idea of hatmana or the cooking? It's the idea of hatmana.
Only hatmana, not to do with cooking, even if it's fully cooked. The problem is, Chachamim said that if you would be allowed to do hatmana on Shabbos in the beginning, you may find that it's not hot enough. whenever you do hatmana, it has to be very hot because it's not adding heat, it's just keeping the heat. So it has to start off very hot. Maybe you'll find that it's not so hot and you'll forget and reheat it. So that's why he didn't allow you to do it on Shabbos. Even though in this case it's clearly very hot, it's still on the blech. Nevertheless, you cannot do an original hatmana on Shabbos.
But usually when you're covering it, sometimes it can be hot, it has to slow down and cool it.
Of course, but you want it to be very hot at that point. So therefore they said you can't do it because you may reheat it if you forget. Chazarah afilu b'davar shelo ma'aser al derech sheisbar b'sim rishon zayin. Kol makom ein hakol makzos kruchim ela sav doif ne'akdeira al piyah megula ma'alas amutar shein zederech hatmana. Now the Alter Rebbe does give you a way out. If you do the hatmana only around the sides and not around the top, that will be okay. So that's
On
one way you
Shabbos.
can do it, even on Shabbos. Yeah.
What?
If you do the hatmana only around the sides and not on the top, like we said before, the Ramah says that's not considered hatmana.
Why not the opposite?
They said at the bottom. Where the bottom is
On top and not on the side.
If I'm not mistaken, the main way to do hatmana when it's not moisef hevel is on the top. When it comes to moisef hevel, the main thing is on the bottom and the sides, because that's you want to heat it up from the bottom. When it comes to keeping the heat, the main thing is the top, because that's where the heat escapes. You know what I mean? So if it's just the top, not the sides, it's a problem. If it's just the sides, not the top, then it's okay. All right. David reminds us that it's Pesach Sheni, and you should enjoy your shmur matzah.
Didn't you say on Shabbos, it's a problem?
What's
Whether
that?
Mosif Hevel or whether not Mosif Hevel, on Shabbos, it's a problem.
Correct. But if it's not on the top, it's only the sides, it's not considered hatmana. Correct.
Putting your in the pot, without it covering the oven, then you keep it. You know that, put the lid off, keep it hot.
One more time, I didn't hear you. If you put it,
Put the pot, aluminum pan, in the oven.
Yep.
Without cover. Take it out. You don't have to cover it to keep it not to let it get cold.
covering of the pot is not hatmana. The cover of the pot is not hatmana, because that's just the cover of the pot. It's just like the pot itself is not hatmana. You cover a pot because you don't want it to get dirty. You don't want the. I mean, that's a secondary thing. A cover on a pot is just the way you normally keep things. It's not considered an act of hatmana. It's just considered like you cover your pot. All right, my friends, Ma'ariv,
I have a quick question.
go ahead.
We're not going through and doing absolutely everything. Is it possible for you to give us a list of what we are doing, or a scope of what we are doing?
Yeah, I'll send it on an email. It's a
Okay, so do you know at this point what we are going to be doing? What's in scope for the?
I know what I plan on doing for sure, and I would like to do more than that depending on our pace. So I'll let you know.
Okay, thank you very much.
Very good, my pleasure. All the best.
Okay, bye.